So we're on Kuf Bava Metzia, 106b, bottom of the Mishnah. We spoke about this yesterday. So the guy was a choicher, and he pays a fixed amount of rent, and he's supposed to plant a field of. He said he's going to plant a field of barley. He shouldn't plant a field of wheat. A field of wheat, he can plant a field of barley. That's because the wheat doesn't damage the ground. The wheat damages the soil more than the barley. Says the Gemara, bottom of 106b, Kuf Vav Beis. What's the reason of Rav Shimon Gamliel that prohibits you from changing what the owner said to you, even if you're engaged, if you're planting something that's easier on the soil? So the first opinion is the Jewish people won't do an injustice, they won't speak deceit, and you won't find in their words that they're sort of changing their minds. And the idea here is that this, if you told them you'll do something, you shouldn't change your mind and do something else. So Morris is Meisvei. Is that so obvious? Mageves Purim LaPurim. So you collect money from Atonas Levyanim, that's to give out to the poor people on Purim. You have to give it specifically on Purim. They medacting b'dover. One second. Yeah. You don't have to be thorough in your investigations to determine who constitutes a poor person. However, the money that's given out on Purim is supposed to go to the su'uda, the meal of Purim. It's not supposed to go to some random expenses of the poor person, such as buying a new shoelace, unless there was an approval by the committee that's in charge of dispersing the charity funds. However, who said this in the name of Reb Meir? However, Rav Shimon Gamliel is mekel. Rav Shimon Gamliel is lenient. He allows you to disperse the charity even for a purpose that isn't directly related to Purim. 1 second, isn't this changing your mind? The court here is changing. They collected the money for Purim, and now they're dispersing the money for a different reason. So Rabbi says, "Time Rav Shimon Kidamar, the Omer Mar." Sabai proposes another explanation for Rav Shimon Gamliel. The Omer Mar Hayman the Nichle the Titbar Ari Lizri Shat the Chidi Shat the Sari Shat the Shatziv Shat the Erev. So we'll go with Rashi's interpretation here, even though it doesn't sound very good. Taisus sort of alternates same words, but translated slightly differently. Rashi explained that the teacher of Abaya, that would be Rabbi Bar Nachmani, he taught that if you want your field to be unsuccessful and unproductive, then you should rotate your crops. And therefore, because this year might be a year, if you told the owner that you're planting barley, it could be that last year he planted barley, and that's why he would want you to plant barley this year as well. Because if you rotate the crops, it's damaging to the field. Taisus points out the obvious, that crop rotation seems to be the normal way, the normal lay of the land. It seems to be a beneficial practice. So Taisus interprets the word titper aroi that the land should lay fallow, the opposite, meaning crop rotation is a method in which the land would be the same as if it were laid fallow. So you avoid having to not plant your field for a year by alternating the crops. And according to this, would be the opposite interpretation. So it could be that last year the owner planted wheat, that's why he wants you to plant that's why he wants you to plant barley this year, or the reverse, where last year planted barley, that's why this year he wants you to plant wheat, and not barley. Okay, so regardless of either interpretation, because either.
I don't understand what the question was to begin with. By Magnis Purim, you collected money from people that were giving for Purim, so you can't change it. Here we're talking about between two people, and it's better for him even if he'll plant what's not going to hurt the soil. And Yeb Shimon says, no, whatever was made up. What's the connection to Purim?
But the connection to Purim is that the money collected on Purim is collected specifically for the meal of Purim.
That's because the people gave it for that reason.
No, it's not just people gave it. It's collected for that reason as well. There's a major distinction. The distinction is ein medaktik and bedavar. Typically, if you want to get charity, you might have to fill out some long forms. We'll have to do some research and investigations. Purim, we don't do that. Purim, you're exempt. There is no investigation. There's no long form. If somebody says that they need money for the Purim meal, they give him. And that's part of the reason why the money cannot be redirected.
Yeah, but I'm just asking, the idea is the reason behind this because the people gave it for that reason. Well, you have to investigate.
No. It's also collected for that reason. And it's collected under a different framework than usual. It's in the usual framework, that money would only be able to be dispersed with research and investigations to make sure the people that are actually poor. Money collected for Purim is not like that. You don't have to do that investigation.
So obviously it's something about Purim.
I'm sorry?
So it's something about Purim. Why does it bear on our halacha?
According to the original version of Rav Shimon Gamliel, once you say that something is for a specific purpose, you can't change it to a different purpose. Whether that would be money of Purim going for money of Purim going for a different being given out to the poor for other reasons, or whether it's a guy who commits to plant barley and wants to plant wheat. Who commits to plant wheat and wants to plant barley. Either one is problematic because you're changing from what you said you were going to do. The Gemara falls off of that. The Gemara says that that's not the reason. The reason of Rav Shimon Gamliel is a local reason. It's specific to something to do with crop rotation. Either according to Rashi because crop rotation is undesirable, or according to Taisus because crop rotation is desirable. But regardless, that's why you can't change from what you told the owner because he potentially was relying on you with regard to crop rotation, whether because he didn't want it or whether because he wanted it. So it's a different reason than we said previously. Okay, next portion of the Mishnah. Tvua laser and kidneys. If he said he's going to plant grain, he shouldn't plant barley. I'm sorry, he should not plant beans. So Gemara says, Masni by Rabbi Yehudah Ravin. Rabbi Yehudah said to Ravin, Tvua Yisraenu kidneys. You could plant, if you promise you would plant grain, you could plant beans. So the Gemara says, V'hanan Tvua lo Yisraenu kidneys, but didn't the Mishnah say the opposite? Depends on which country you live. In Israel, things are higher up, and it's less fertile, so you can't plant beans. But in Bovel, we are more irrigated valleys, so then it doesn't make much of a difference whether or not you plant beans over grain. He says to Rav and his brother, Hani tichli de bekisna. Tichli, I believe, is cress. Ein behem mishum gezel. So this is cress that grows in the fields of flax. There's no concern of gezel. If you uproot the cress plant, there is no concern of stealing. Because anyone who's growing flax does not want the cress to be in the field. You're doing them a favor by uprooting it. However, if, however, the plant matured sufficient that the cress seeds are now fit to grow another cress plant, so then then there is a concern of stealing if you uproot it, because at that point it's already ruined the field of flax. So now the question is he going to make a profit by at least selling the cress seeds? and he would, and that's why if you uproot it, then you're stealing, because at that point it's too late. He at that point he'll be okay to have it in the field. The damage was already done. So Rabbi Yehudah says to Rav, son of Nachman, Rav and Achi, Rav my brother, Hani Dili Diloch, the Diloch Dili. 1 second. Yeah. There are some trees that are mine that are really yours, and some trees that are yours that are really mine. Let's explain. Nog b'nei metzra, the custom of those of neighbors, they're on the opposite sides of the fence. Ilan hanoite lekan lekan, v'hanoite lekan lekan. A tree whose roots are in both are going out in both directions. That's what I mean when I say that what's mine is yours and what's yours is mine. If you have a tree that was standing adjacent to the fence, so Amar Rav says, so Rav here is the opinion of is also the opinion of Rabbi Yehudah, and he says it depends which direction the roots are going. You can have a tree that's on my side of the fence, but the roots are going on the other side of the fence. So then the fruit of the tree go to the owner where the roots of the tree are. And the same thing is true in the reverse. If there was a tree on this side and the roots went in the other direction, this guy would own the tree that's over here. Shmuel says, Cholken, you split it. So Gemara says, if you have a tree that's on the border, it's split. Well, clearly here we support the opinion of Shmuel. Shmuel says the tree is split. Rav says, what do you mean? Rav says the tree can go to the other person. So the Gemara says, that price says specifically with the tree is exactly on the border. That's why it's split. If that's the case, obviously it should be split. So the Gemara says, the chiddush of the brisa is where the tree is growing right. You have a tree right on the border, but all the fruit is on one side of the tree. So the Gemara says, why is that? Why wouldn't we split it? So the Gemara says, I would think that the guy who has the fruit on his side of the property, he says, draw a line this way, and the fruit that's on my side, I get to keep. The chiddush of the brisa is that the other fellow could say, why are you splitting it this way? Maybe split it this way, and then we'll split it 50-50. Okay, so in other words, reviewing, according to Rav, if the tree's on the border with roots on both sides, then you split the fruit of the tree. The tree's on one side, but the roots are going into the other side, it would belong to the other person. And that's the opinion of Rabbi Yehudah, and that's the opinion that Rabbi Yehudah said to Rav. Amar Rabbi Yehudah Rav and Bar Nachman. Rabbi Yehudah says to Rav and Bar Nachman, Rav and Achi, letizman ara desmicha lamasa. He says to him, here's some good advice: don't buy property that's close to town. To Amar Bavu Amar Fono, because Ravu says in the name of Rav, Amar Rav in the name of Rav. When a tree is ready for harvest, you shouldn't be staring at other people's properties. And this has to do with ayin hara, the evil eye. If you sort of look at his tree, then it can cause him to have less than he has. So the Gemara says, this can't be. Rabbi Abba found the students of Rav. So he asked the students of Rav to explain to him these verses. Okay, we'll go through the verses, but the question really ends on the next page. But in summary, the question here is that apparently it's a blessing to have your property next to the city. So why is Rabbi Yehudah giving Rav an advice? Don't have property that's next to the city because people are going to stare at it. The students of Rav said it's a blessing to have property next to the city. So which is it? Is it a blessing, or is it something that you should avoid doing because it could result in curse? Okay, now that's the question. We'll get to it. We'll address it. After we turn the page. But in the meantime, let's see what exactly was the statement of the students of Rav. This is by what we call the Teichacha, the blessings and the curses that were given in Parashas Kisavai, in the middle of Deuteronomy. Begin with some of the blessings. Baruch ata be'ir, you are blessed in the city. Ubaruch ata b'tzada, you're blessed in the field. Baruch ata b'vayacha, you're blessed with your entry. Ubaruch ata b'tzisecha, you're blessed with your exit. Va'amrulei, so the students of Rav says, Halkim Rav, this is how Rav explained it. Baruch ata be'ir, you're blessed in the city. Shehei beis l'samach u'beis ha'knesses, so that your house is close to the synagogue. You don't have to walk too far. Baruch ata b'tzada, you're blessed in the field, so that your assets should be close to the city. Again, and this is the point that we're trying to ask a question from. Over here, we see that the students of Rav say in the name of Rav, you want your money, your assets, your field to be close to the city. This which contradicts the opinion of Rabbi Yehudah, what Rabbi Yehudah gave advice to Ravin. Okay, Baruch ata b'vayacha, you should be blessed when you come in. You shouldn't find your wife sort of in a state of limbo of whether or not she's in nida when you come home from a journey. Baruch ata b'tzisecha, blessed are you when you leave. Sheyu tzitzoi me'echa kamaisecha. Your children should be like you. Okay. And Rav Yechanan said to the students of Rav, Lo yamar hachi. This is not the right interpretation. I'll tell you the right interpretation. Baruch ata be'ir, you're blessed in the city. Shehei beis hakisei samash l'shulchanecha. You should have a bathroom that's close to your table. Obviously, today we have indoor plumbing. But before that, the reason for this advice is, if you recall, in Mesechus Brachas, the Gemara deals with at length the advantage of a person always checking himself to make sure that he does not hold himself in from going to he doesn't restrain himself from going to the bathroom when he needs to go, because that can result in all sorts of illness, including a man losing his ability to conceive children. Okay, why does Rabbi Yechanan 1 second? I'll basic Knesset. Why does Rabbi Yechanan reject the opinion of Rav that says that it means your house should be close to the synagogue? Because Rabbi Yechanan is according to his own opinion. We saw this opinion in Saita. There's actually reward for having a longer trip to the shul. By having a longer journey, you get more rewards for the additional steps that you take. So that's why it's not necessarily a blessing to be very close to the shul. You're blessed in the field. What type of blessing is a blessing in the field? That your assets should be diversified. How do you diversify your assets? Shlish b'tvua, a third in grain. Shlish b'zeisim, a third in olives. Shlish b'kfanim, a third in grapevines. Baruch ata b'vayacha, you're blessed when you come in. Baruch ata b'tzisecha, you're blessed when you leave. What does that mean? When a person leaves the world, it should be like when he came to this world. Just like when a person comes to the world, he comes to the world free of sin. When he leaves the world, he should leave the world free of sin. So now we get back to the question again.
Why does Rabbi Yechanan argue with all the other ones? It only explains why he argues on the first one.
I'm sorry?
The Gemara only explains why Rabbi Yechanan argues on the first Amira on the first pasuk. Doesn't explain why he argues on all the other pasukim.
So fair point. I would say that the Gemara is pointing it out because in that case, the opinions are actually mutually exclusive. Rabbi Yechanan fundamentally disagrees with Rav. The other interpretations, there's not necessarily clear that there's a disagreement. In other words, with regard to the issue of being close to shul, Rabbi Yechanan definitively says it's, in a certain sense, it's better not to be close to shul because you get reward for the steps. And Rav says no, it's a blessing. And the other ones, it's a question of sort of what exactly the verse is referring to. But neither of them debates the fact that a person should die without sin, for example. Just like he entered the world.
They can both be true.
Correct. They're not correct. they're not fundamentally disagreeing about points about what is a blessing and what's a curse. They're just disagreeing about what the verse refers to. Okay, regardless, the main question here is according to the students of Rav, there is a blessing for your property to be next to the city, and according to Rabbi Yehudah's statement to Ravin, it's actually a bad idea because you have this ayin hara, the evil eye. Gemara is very simple. Very simple. It depends if there's a fence. If you have a privacy fence, so people can't steer into your property, then of course, who would not want their assets to be very close to the city? They don't have to travel far. But if there's no privacy fence, then you have the evil eye, and therefore it's better not to have property next to the city. God will remove from you all illness. Rav says, Zu ayin. This is the eye. Meaning the evil eye. Rav is according to his own opinion. Rav Kivri. Rav ended up in a cemetery. He did what he did, and he sort of figured out why everyone died. He's speaking with the dead, and they told him why. Obviously, in a manner which isn't much of speaking to the dead is prohibited according to halacha. Certain types is not necessarily prohibited according to halacha. And the dead revealed to him, 99 people die because of an evil eye, and only one person dies in the normal way of the land, where people die from old age. Shmuel says, actually the curse of this illness is the wind. Shmuel is according to his own opinion. Virtually every person, wind is culpable for his death. So the Gemara says, what do you mean? So like, okay, if somebody dies from old age, well, maybe it was his, maybe it was the ear that he breathed. He lived next to a toll booth or something. It's very easy to pin it on the wind with the ear. But what about people that were killed by the king? They were executed. You're telling me that every single person dies from wind. What about the people that were executed, guillotined? How exactly were they killed from the wind? So the Gemara says, if not for the wind, you'd be able to make a potion, a medicine, and you could cure them. The wind sort of either it hastens them death and it makes the potion, not useful. Rav Chanina says, what is this illness? Zutzina. It's the illness of cold. The Rav Chanina, according to his own opinion, Hakol b'dei shemayim. Everything is in the hands of heaven, except for heat and cold. And so to speak, God decides whether a person is going to be hot or cold. Obviously in his house to a lesser extent, but mostly when he's traveling. Shenemar, as the verse states, Tzinim pachem b'derech ikesh, shomer nafsha yerchim. If there's cold or heat on the roads, someone wants to protect himself, won't go on the road. But obviously, there's no way to control it once you agree to go on the journey. Rabbi Bar Chanina Amar, Rabbi Bar Chanina says, Zu soya. This is waste product. The Amar Mar, because the rabbis taught, soya sachaitim with soya saizen, the waste product of the nose or the ears. Obviously, this would be mucus or earwax. Ruban kasha, a lot of it is bad. Umiutan, and a small amount is yafa, is good. So the cure of this illness is a cure that it shouldn't be a lot. Rabbi Elazar says zumara. This is the gallbladder. Yeah, very interesting. My grandfather ended up passing away because of an issue with his gallbladder. He went into the hospital a little less than a week ago. Tanya Nami Hachi. So the gallbladder is the bile. If there's an overproduction of bile, so that goes around to the rest of the body and it causes damage, which is I guess somewhat responsible. My grandfather was very ill when he went into the hospital in the first place, but that was an additional illness that he had to deal with on top of his problems. Tanya Nami Hachi, and God willing, I'll talk about it more a couple of days once my wife comes back. Tanya Nami Hachi, Machla, when you talk about an illness, Zumara. This is the illness of excessive bile produced by the gallbladder. Why is it called an illness? Why is that the example? Like, why is the word illness defined by gallbladder problems? So Gemara says, because it's an illness that subsumes the entire body. Another possibility is machla. There are 83 illnesses that are caused by the gallbladder. The kulan, and all of these can be solved by pas shachris, eating breakfast, the melach with salt, the kitan shamayim, bread, salt, and water, mivat losan, that will solve all of your problems. And if you didn't believe me, Tanar Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Yud Gimel Dvarim Nemer b'pas shachris. There are 13 attributes with eating bread, salt, and water for breakfast every day. If you, I think you can fulfill this obligation with cereal. I'm not sure that bread here means literally breads. I think it means eating a grain food for breakfast. Okay, what does it do? It's 13 benefits. Matzels min Kamma, it protects you from heat. Uminatzina, sort of your body is more well regulated, so it takes care of heat. Uminatzina, and from cold. Uminhazikin, from wind. Uminhamazikim, and from the demons. One second. Okay, I'm not exactly sure how that works. I guess it's a spiritual thing. It makes you wise, and the reason for that is because your sort of stomach is settled and your mind is settled. Such that you can even win in judgment because you're calmer and more satiated. It's easier for you to think clearly. Lilmud Torah ulalamid. It helps you study Torah and teach. Same reason. Udvar of nishmam, and people listen to what you're saying because you have because you're satiated. You have the patience to explain. Talmudim iskayim biyadai, and he remembers what he taught again because he studied from a place of satiety and calmness. His body doesn't overly sweat. And from eating too much, if he's the type of person that is constantly desiring women, he'll be with his wife in the morning and he will not desire another woman. It's Rashi's interpretation. It kills the stomach parasites. And some say it removes jealousy and it invites love. Again, the reason is the same thing, because a person is calmer and he's more satiated, he can think more clearly, he isn't as influenced by other people's jealousy than he would be if he was nervous and hungry. And the same reason it would invite love. Amr le Ravo, the Ravo Bar Mori. So Ravo is at the Ravo Bar Mori. Hamils and Amri Inchi Shitin Rahiti Rahit. 60 people will run, and they won't be able to reach a person that eats breakfast every day. And the rabbi said, these are the things that Rabbi Yehudah Hanasi taught. Rabbi Yehudah Hanasi taught his children: eat breakfast in the morning if it's a hot day or if it's a cold day. They won't be hungry and they won't be thirsty and they won't be struck by cold or heat, the cold or the sun. Why? Because they won't be hungry and won't be thirsty. That's why they won't be smitten by heat and cold. That's your source. And I will give you a different source. You'll serve God, and He will bless your bread and your water. You'll serve God. This is how a Jew should start his morning after Daf Yomi. You Kriya Shema, you daven, and then what do you do? This is breakfast. Once you've done this, God promises to remove illness from you. That's how the verse continues. So because you have the blessing of breakfast, therefore God removes illness, because breakfast will remove the difficulties associated with heat or cold. Amar Rabbi Yehudah leRav Ada Mishucha. Rabbi Yehudah says to Rav Ada Mishucha, he was a surveyor. He would do the measurements to make sure that the property that's being purchased is the right measurements. So he said to him, "Lo tezalzel b'meshechto." Okay. Be very careful with your measurements because even a small size field, porto, even some small piece of the property, chazal korkum arishka. 1 second here. Yeah. Even a small piece of property is good for planting kurkuma rishka. That Rashi says it's an oriental saffron. The word oriental apparently is an ancient French word. I didn't know that. Although what's interesting is that apparently there's variation in the Rashi texts. And I'm reading from the Yosef Hadar. If you have the older text, they don't have the word oriental in Rashi. Okay. But basically, it's the best type of saffron. I think apparently this is how it is today as well. Indian saffron from India, I think, is the highest quality saffron and a very valuable crop. Now, apparently, from what I understand, to grow saffron is expensive because it's very difficult to harvest. It takes a tremendous volume it's labor intensive. So it takes a tremendous volume to harvest even a small amount. But I guess even a small amount of the property, you'd be able to grow a few sprigs of saffron. I'm not sure, saffron flowers or something. And that would make a significant difference in the person's income. Rabbi Yehudah says to Rav Ada the surveyor, okay, Dalet Ames the Anigra Zilzabu, the Anara Loy Timashchen. One second. Okay. Basically, you have the main river, and then you have these irrigation canals. And the custom was that people did not plant within 4 ames of the irrigation canal. So Rabbi Yehudah says to the surveyor, that 4 ames, those 6 feet, you don't have to be so concerned about it. Yeah, we'll explain why in a moment. However, with regard to the river, that you should be very strict with. Rabbi Yehudah is according to his own opinion. The anara de kula alma. The anigra, the 6 feet of the local stream or the irrigation ditch. So it just impacts the local people. You don't have to go crazy over making sure that it's making precise measurements. However, with regard to the river, the river belongs to everybody. Therefore, you should make sure that nobody plants within 6 feet of the river. Makraz Rav Ami, Maloi Kasfi Nagdi, betray Ivrinara, Kutsu. So Rav Ami notified everyone of a rabbinical decree. Basically, if anyone's ever been upstate New York, they have the Erie Canal. The Erie Canal was built in the mid 1800s, and basically it connected the Great Lakes to the Hudson River. It allowed for a sea bridge. You were able to carry barges of grain from many different places in New York and bring it down to New York City. Now in the canal is very small. How do they manage the canal? So they had these barges, and they'd be pulled by teams of animals on the ground. So you'd have the animal. There's if you go to the Erie Canal, you'll see this today. There's a pathway now. It's a bike path for leisure, but this pathway connects is along the entire length of the canal, so that the teams of animals can pull the barges downriver until eventually they get to the Mohawk River and then down to the Hudson. This is a similar idea. So you have these barges of stuff. And instead of teams of animals, they actually had people that would pull the ropes. So people pull the ropes, well, they need a place to walk. So he says the rule is that if you have a tree that's literally at the edge of the river, then you're entitled to chop it down. You can cut down the tree because there is a privilege for those that schlep the barges to walk on 1 shoulder's worth. So the riverbank, you have a shoulder's worth, basically enough room to walk for 1 person, and that any tree in that area could be chopped down because the people that carry that pull the barges are entitled to walk there. Okay. Okay, we'll finish this. Okay, let's continue. Rav Nosson bar Hoshea, 1 second. 1 second. Yeah, Rav Nosson bar Hoshea cuts shitzer amsa. He would cut 16 amas. Okay, it's a lot of 24 feet. Also, b'nei Mashrunya dafnu. So the people from Mashrunya came and they started hitting him, and they weren't very happy. Who saw our Kurshas Rabbim? He thought the privilege for the river was 16 amas, just like a public domain is 16 amas wide. And he was not correct. A public domain is 16 amas wide, and therefore you can't interrupt the public domain by planting trees. However, with regard to the barges, the privilege is only given for one shoulder's worth. Let's continue. Rabbi Rav Huna had a forest on the edge of the river. Amrulay, the student said to him, Negatz Mar, why don't you cut your forest so that you have this pathway for the people that are schlepping the barges to pass? Amrlahu, so he said to them, Kutsui loy with the toy Negatz anal. Cut the people that are on top of me and the people that are upstream and downstream, meaning the two people that were next to his property, the person upstream and downstream refused to cut down their forests. So therefore cut them first, and then I'll cut mine. So Gemara says, no, it doesn't work that way. How can you even give such an argument? Fix yourself, then go fix others. First the person should work on himself before he works on other people. So why is he saying go fix the other people before I cut down my forest? You cut your forest first, and then we'll deal with the other people. So Gemara says, no. The forest belonged to the person named Parzak, who was the governor. Because it's the governor, he refuses to cut down his trees. You're not going to be able to fight with him. And if he doesn't cut down his trees, you're not going to walk on one side of the river, then cross the river to walk on my property for a little bit, and then cross back over the river because the other guy refuses to cut his trees. So therefore, it doesn't make a difference at this point. And until the governor is prepared to chop down his tree, it won't make a difference. Okay. Have a great day. Should hear a Surot Tovot. And we'll figure out today. I'll sort of figure out what's going to happen over Shabbos. Somebody's